Welcome back to the Intentional Intern Podcast. This is the first episode back where we'll have guests, with our first guest for this week and this year being Leslie Campbell, a senior at Virginia Tech majoring in advertising. She's currently a member of Grammy U, a program that provides opportunities for emerging music industry professionals and creatives through events, networking opportunities, and more. Throughout the episode, Leslie and I discuss how she discovered her passion for music, authenticity and networking in the music industry, and the importance of mentorship in the space, plus more. For those who want to connect with Leslie, you can find her LinkedIn linked below. With that, let's get into our next episode. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I am tired, but that's all in a day's work. It's Friday. It's been a long week, but I'm super glad and super energized now that I get to speak with you today. So I'm super excited for you to share your story and talk about what you've got going on to our audience. And if you could kick us off by just telling us about yourself.
Yeah, well, hey guys, I'm Leslie Campbell. I'm a rising senior at Virginia Tech studying advertising. I'm originally from the DMV area, and I'm pursuing a career in music.
Ooh, okay, super cool. You're the first on the podcast to talk about advertising and music in this way. So I have a bunch of stuff that I definitely want to ask you, starting with where did the passion of advertising come from? And then when did you decide that you wanted to pursue a career in music?
Sure, so I guess the two kind of go hand in hand. And funny story is, I'm not super into advertising. I decided I wanted to work in music early on. I'll get into that story after. But I just needed a degree. My school doesn't necessarily specialize in entertainment or the media in that way. So I just went with an advertising degree. It was something that I felt comfortable doing. I have a little bit of background in marketing, but I really just I'm choosing that major just to get the degree. But even funnier story, how I got into music. It was actually when I first got to college. I had this huge infatuation, I guess, if you will, with Jack Harlow. I went to his concert. I had a blast, and I followed every single thing that he did. Like on all following all the fan pages on Instagram. Like I tracked this man's location. It was kind of crazy. But I'd always see this woman in his photos, and I'm like, who is this lady? Like, why is she always there? Come to find out after doing my research that was his manager, and I was like, well, gosh, I want to get paid to be around Jack Harlow all day. So I did my research on her and what she did, how much money artist managers make. And in that, I kind of went down a loophole of just finding out different careers in music. And I was like, wow, this is actually a business. It's not something that was ever necessarily taught to me or encouraged before. That just wasn't usually the path people took. So I had no idea. And come to find out, many people don't now that I speak about it and now that I'm in it. But yeah, that's what drove my initial curiosity.
Okay, shout out to Jack Harlow for putting you on the path.
Yes. Shout out Jack Harlow.
I love that. And I hope that he listens to this and, makes some shake for sure. That's super dope, honestly, though. And I love to hear everybody's stories of what makes them inspired to do what they do, because sometimes you get answers that are like, oh, I've always been into this since childhood, or, things like that. But then you also get these super interesting stories of, oh, yeah, so this really prominent thing in my life happened. And then that's when everything else kind of opened up for me.
Yeah, I can't believe that's a story I have to stick with when I'm 40. I'm like, wow, a crush on Jack Harlow led to my career. But you know what? I think it's had a positive effect.
No, for sure. That is something that you say at a party. That's your fun fact.
Yeah, it is. It is actually. People make me tell that story. I'm like, gosh, guys, my friends, they all think it's so funny. I'm like, guys.
Well, look, it's something that'll definitely get eyes turning for sure. And let's get into that. Let's talk about this aspiring career for music and where that comes from. So, looking at what you want to do and thinking about also your internship, let's talk about how those paths kind of coincide. So, can you lead us to what your internship experience has been like?
Like my first internship right outside of freshman year, I was working at Warner Music Group, but that was in the finance department. So managing the finances and I guess the deals and going through the data to look and see how successful an artist was versus how much money they'll be getting in their deal. I also did a PR internship at the Oreo company. I've done an internship with two country music festivals, which was really interesting. One of the internships that I probably wanted to do the least, and I don't want to say that in a bad way, but it was my first internship I actually got. Not Warner Music Group. I did that one throughout the semester in college, and then they ended up flying me out to those music festivals. But I was really desperate. I just wanted to do something in music, and they were the first ones to pick me up after trying and trying and trying. And I mean, that was my freshman year, so I did catch on quite quickly. I can't complain. Wasn't excited for it. I was like, I know nothing about country music. I still went, and I had a blast. There, I did about everything from escorting VIP people to looking at the ticketing to doing giveaways. That was one of the most incredible experiences of my life because I really got to touch on everything and literally run, and over 30,000 people were in attendance, a festival of that size. So that was on my freshman summer. I really packed it in. I really grinded. But then my last summer, not this most recent one, but the one before that, my sophomore year, I did venue marketing at Capital One Arena. It's a big arena in DC where the Wizards play. That was my only marketing experience. But I got to do some pretty cool things like creating artist gifts and like customizing it and doing research to find out which artists that were coming to the arena, what they liked, and what we could get them on behalf of Capital One Arena. But my most exciting internship and probably my favorite thus far was going out to LA this past summer, and I worked at a company called Creative Artist Agency, which was a talent agency. And for those who don't know, agents, we work on the live side of music as in regards to music. They have a bunch of different departments over there, from motion picture talent, literary, podcast, a whole bunch of things that encompass all of entertainment. But I was on the music team. And we deal with the finances and bridging the gap between the artists and the promoters and the venues and dealing with that, but on a more finance and contract based setting, if that makes sense.
That's super cool. What did you enjoy about it that made it the most fun for you and the most memorable?
Well, for sure, just being out in LA. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I'm from the DMV, and we do definitely have a music scene. And I think it's growing more and more each day, but there are still limited opportunities. So being out in LA and being able to network with not only the people at the company, but being just around the industry, I really, for the first time, felt like I was actually in it. That was super cool. I loved all of my coworkers, the other interns. HR did their big one. Like, just the most talented intellectuals I've ever met. So well rounded, too. Everyone had such different hobbies outside of music. It was just so great to pick everyone's brain. Not only the interns, but the assistants were amazing and so helpful and so talented as well. So being able to speak with them and get their stories, it was a really open program. So we even got to speak to the agents as well, who have an amazing list of clients. So I'm like, wow, you met Beyonce? Like, you're Beyonce's agent? Like, that's absolutely insane to me. Like, Beyonce. I felt like Beyonce was speaking to me herself. Um, but yeah, I'd say that was probably the best part of being out there in the internship.
I love to hear it, especially as an HR, what I want to be, an emerging HR professional, of course. I love hearing that HR did their big one and you had the opportunity to connect with other like-minded individuals such as yourself, but also other people that were super different, and being able to pick their brains, like you said earlier, of just what they do, what could be next, what are they outside of what they do professionally, and things like that. And so I find it really awesome that you were able to have that opportunity. And I want to ask you, from your standpoint of networking, what were some of your favorite tips and tricks or things that you learned throughout your experience?
Um, well, I think for starters, a lot of people were very confused as to why I was so internship based from the jump of college. Like, a lot of people go in their junior year or maybe even their sophomore year starting to think about internships. But I think the more time I spent in the corporate space, I was really able to grow and hone in on those skills. As someone that I consider myself an introvert. I found it hard to, I guess, especially in my earlier stages, make friends and make connections with people. So I think my experiences throughout all my past internships definitely landed me in a good spot this summer. And I think something that worked for me was authenticity. I showed up as myself, as my full self. I tell my Jack Harlow story in every single interview. Yeah, I'm just myself. Going into an agency setting, it's very daunting. A lot of people wear suits, it's very scary, but being myself, I think I've been able to make friends organically. And not only that, but actually having a driven work ethic. I think the two really match well together. Being someone that's cool to hang out with and be friends with, but also knowing that I'll stand on business at the end of the day and get work done. I think that's the best tip that I have for networking.
Yeah, I mean, that's super good advice, especially just starting as early as possible. I know for me, I was the direct opposite. I did not start looking for internships until probably the my first senior year, like my first senior semester. So I was in full panic mode all the time of like, what am I going to do? What is going on? I didn't know what I wanted to do until like my summer after junior year. So I definitely encourage people to try all the things so you do know kind of where your path is or what you want to take, because I definitely did not know that. So props to you for taking that initiative, especially early in the beginning, of just finding ways to be involved in other internships, finding different patterns and different paths of what you could do, especially when you decided, hey, music is going to be the thing that I wanted to do, and even still finding some ways throughout your finance internship to be like, oh, this is interesting, and still finding value within that, but then also taking those opportunities that you were provided within that setting as well, and just really taking the initiative also to just network, find your ways, and like you said, stay authentic, tell your story, because that's how people get to know you the most. Sometimes it is between your Jack Harlow story and then someone else's story that really makes a difference, especially in the energy and the passion that you bring to what you want to do.
100%. And I think that's actually why I got my job at the record label, because I applied anyways, but they said it was only juniors and seniors at the time. And of course, I was a freshman. And I'm not going to lie, don't think I was their first, second, or even third choice. But I told that story, and coincidentally, Jack Harlow was signed to that label. So I think that really went a long way. I was the youngest one there, didn't really know what I was doing, and I don't want to say, yeah, I could say regrets. I definitely have some regrets about that experience, but I think, again, doing that experience and then building on top of it for the past years, I've been able to reflect on what didn't go well, how I can sort of tweak it, maneuver my way around the corporate setting. And yeah, so I would recommend for anyone out there. I know it might be stressful, but starting earlier as you can, especially in an industry or if it's something that you're passionate about, is fun. Give yourself some time to explore. I realized working at a record label wasn't necessarily for me at the time, but I wouldn't have known that unless I worked there that summer. So yeah.
Exactly. It's super important. Just as much as you know what you want to do, it's equally as important, if not more, to know what you do not want to do. And that's a huge part of internships. Like, there are some people who come out of internships and they don't like what they did, or they see themselves not being in that profession. And that's also a big part of the internship, to know what you like, to know what you don't. It's not just about knowing what you like and then getting a full-time job. Sometimes it's the opposite of knowing, hey, I actually don't like this, and that's okay.
100%. I totally agree.
Yeah. And it seems like you've learned a lot about just what type of skills you've been wanting to polish and things that you've been working on as you've been continuing to work towards your dreams. And so, from your perspective and what you've done and your end goal of wanting to be that lady that was standing next to Jack Harlow all the time,
Yes.
what do you think are some skills for people who also may want to pursue the same path that you're doing? What do you think are the absolute like necessary skills that people need to know that you've garnered through your experience?
That's hard because I think one thing I didn't realize going in is that the music industry is a business. So there's something for everyone, whether you want to work closely with talent or you want to be in the back room doing computer science or like finance or accounting. Like there's room for every single major and every different type of personality. I would definitely say having an upbeat personality in the agency space. I'll only speak to the agency space, what I did last summer. Um, I would say that is definitely helpful. It's very relationship based. So being able to maintain and create good relationships with different promoters, different venues. I'd also say being type A and detailed. We deal with a lot of contracts, a lot of numbers, and contracts can often get messy. Honestly, I'm surprised you don't need a law degree or a finance degree to get into an agency, which is confusing to me. But a lot of that type of stuff. So being detailed would be one. You don't want to skip over, miss anything in a contract. You need to be able to see not just what's happening right now, but in terms of planning tours, it's not about what's happening in 2024. Right now, we're looking at 2025 and 2026, and being able to predict the needs of the artists or just where we'll be as a society and where fans will be and what they'll want to see. So I think having a forward thinking mindset is also definitely a good skill to have.
See, I would have never guessed any of that thinking about from the outside looking in and having no experience in that space whatsoever. I wouldn't be able to tell you the first thing. I probably would have told you things honestly that were completely off base of maybe around that same kind of negotiation skill because I think that's something that everybody should have no matter the profession. But everything else you said, would not have come across my mind.
Yeah, no, and that's what I think honestly intrigued me is like before I was in it, I had no idea. Honestly, I had no idea what an agency was till I stepped foot in that building. It was very intimidating. But to me, that's what pushes me. I'm so curious about how this all works and the different types of roles and what people do because it's a lot more than just what people see and especially the fans see from the outside looking in.
Exactly. I can only imagine the behind the scenes work that that type of energy and entertainment is in, and just thinking about like how much work it takes to actually maintain the output that we all see as the public, how much input that takes to just kind of create that energy, whether it's around the smaller stars that we can think of. I can think of like maybe like Jordan Ward. He's not a small artist, but in terms of like Lady Gaga or Beyonce, he is relatively a smaller artist. And thinking about how much energy that takes to have a team behind you that's helping you excel and elevate. And then thinking about the amount of input that you have to put in when you're on like a scale as big as Beyonce or Lady Gaga or Taylor Swift, and thinking about how interesting it must be from that agency space of like this A-lister superstar scale of what those contracts look like. How do you handle that stuff? What type of forward thinking does that entail?
Yeah, exactly. It gets very creative because our agents usually have a roster. It's not just like, oh, I work with Beyonce, but being able to touch on bigger and smaller artists. And it's really rewarding to be amongst the same team as an artist grows and having to change up the plan. So it's something where you really have to stay on your toes at all times. You never know when someone's going to hit a viral moment like Chapel Roan. And now we're looking at totally different venues and totally different things and plans for her. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too. She's been a really recent artist that has been doing music for a while. I remember reading that she's done music for years actually, but like this was her year when everything popped off. I feel the same way about Sabrina Carpenter. She's been coming up really fast in the past like 1 or 2 years. And that's super interesting to see just really how much, even how long you've been doing talent, looking at the virality of social media in that aspect and in that regard and how far that can take you, and then looking at the side that you're on from an agency perspective of wondering, oh, how fast do we have to act on this, to be quick on this, looking at all of these different measures and scales of like, this is what we thought before, yeah, this is actually what we're moving towards. How did like projecting growth of an artist and all of that stuff seems super unique, but I can see also why it's super creative on you guys end.
Yeah, a lot of pressure for sure. Because like I was saying, like in terms of marketing, we're getting into a totally different realm these days with virality and songs blowing up on TikTok or however they may be. Things and plans are changing so quickly. So another thing, if you're not on your toes at all times, it's a hard job, 24/7 around the clock. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend that for you if you were not on your toes and didn't like to keep up with that type of stuff. But no matter, there's room for everyone in the industry, whether that's something that you like or don't like. There's so many different things that you could do.
And I appreciate you saying that as well, of just, this may not be kind of a space that is for everybody because of the type of work that it entails. Some days you may wake up at calls at 2:30 in the morning of, look, one artist, they just blew up overnight. And sometimes that may not be the flow, especially for people like me who really value their 2:30 sleep time.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
wouldn't say live music's for you because also another factor, obviously I work in live music, so going to the shows and the concerts, didn't realize how much of a toll that would take on me, but I got back like 2, 3 weeks ago, slept for my first couple of days here, show after show after show, night after night after night, and it's something that I enjoy, so I had a great time doing it. But like if you like to be in bed by 12, 1, maybe not for you because there's going to be a lot of days where you're up late at
the
night.
fact the fact that I thought she was gonna say, if you like being in bed by like 9, 10, oh no.
No, no, that's so often when it starts. Yeah. But very fun, very rewarding to see artists that you love. And for me as a fan, starting out with a fan and someone that's new to the industry for sure, working on certain people's projects and being like, wow, like I was a fan of them and like seeing them in person, I'm like, wait, they're actually real. Because it's kind of hard to think about when you're seeing them on a screen, but like seeing the person actually standing there. After now that I'm in the industry, quote unquote, I have to hold myself back, excuse me, from fanning out and try to remain professional. But sometimes it's some of those moments or some artists where it's like, whoa, they're actually in front of me, or whoa, I'm actually working on their project, which is super duper fun.
Trust me, it's not just you. I'm sure like it's a human emotion to be in awe all the time. It's something that us as humans, we really enjoy when we have those moments of joy, but awe is something different. Those emotions seem like they're comparable or in terms of like they're interchangeable, but no, the state of awe is like actually insane and you feel less of those moments unless like you said kind of that attachment that you have for Jack Harlow and that connection of how it feels to you and that passion, like those are your in awe moments. And then, especially working in the industry, you'll have a bunch of those moments. I mean, look at us and think about other celebrities as well. There are celebrities who also are in awe of other celebrities, other artists, Beyonce and Rihanna, every time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun space to be in and really cool to see that all happen.
If you could choose, let's say, 5 artists right now, like you have an invitation to say, hey, build your list, who would your 5 artists be?
Oh, that's hard. That's really, really hard. I kind of hate the artist question because I'm more of a fan of songs. And I'm also like, which I don't think a lot of people are interested in, I really like old music. And it's like, I feel like people aren't hiring me to talk about artists that they already know. They want people to find, or especially younger people. That's why we get hired to like be the fresh new face and find the freshest sounds and relate to, I guess, what peers our age are listening to. So that's always been hard for me. But artists, well, I think it's his birthday today. Michael Jackson, if he was still alive. Love Michael Jackson. Brent Faiyaz. Um, I'd have to say Bryson Tiller. I just went to one of his shows earlier in June. Amazing tour. Who else? I don't want to be simple, and I know it's just in LA, so that's Kendrick territory, but love Drake down. Love Drake. And one more. Oh, this is hard. I feel like I messed up my list, but it would be between Rihanna or Nicki Minaj, because I've been a Barb since day one. I don't know where my parents were at or what they were doing while I was listening to Nicki Minaj in the 3rd grade, but she was a part of my childhood. So a lot of love for her and Rihanna too.
Super cool. I mean, your list is your list. So, what you're passionate about, and if you could be on any of these agency scales, I love to ask that question just to see where people's heads is at. I mean, yes, we are around for identifying fresh talent, like you were saying, of, why people choose the early generation, especially within any type of industry dynamic, whether that's corporate or whether that is on a creative scale in that way. But it's also good to have your day ones, or in some case, depending on how old your parents are, your day zeros, people that you already knew.
Yeah, 100%.
It's super nice also from that regard of we don't have like Michael Jackson stardom as much anymore. So like that height or that ceiling of what that looked like. Of course, we have Beyonce to compare, like for our generation, but even seeing that projection of the research and studying, like we have parents who've been around at that time say, "Oh, this was nothing like Michael Jackson," and we have people who can speak to that, and then we can speak to, "Oh, but like this is nothing like Beyonce," and then figuring out what does that growth look like as the generations continue. What does the value of stardom really mean? What do A-listers really look like in terms of our generation? How do we cater to that? How do we find that? What are like the new metrics of that? All of that is kind of combined on top of looking for the next big thing, but then also trying to measure and understand what the next big thing is. And for you guys, it looks different all the time. So I can understand how challenging, but also really, really like fire burning that is for you guys in terms of having that invigorating spirit of just like, this is what keeps me going because every day is different.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Especially going back to virality, not like in this day, choosing and looking at, okay, who just has a viral song right now, like this one song, or who's just a viral artist for these next 2 3 years versus a superpower like Beyonce or even Taylor Swift. And I think even going back to Michael Jackson, it was such an interesting time for him because he built what he was and his brand and his image at a time when there wasn't social media. Like the fact that you could go out and sell at a show with tens of thousands of people in Africa or in another continent without the effects of social media. And then it's also very intimidating. It's quite intimidating. It's a challenge and it's fun, but it's intimidating because you look at what Beyonce and Taylor Swift is doing, and some people are like, "Well, how can you do more than that?" Like this past summer, I had a challenge where we had to try and pitch Billie Eilish. It was completely a made up challenge, but they gave us random artists. One other team had Sexy Red, which was really cool. But we had to sort of come up with a plan to get her to sign to our agency. And it was definitely a challenge in thinking, especially with our intern minds, and we're not fully in the industry, we don't have much experience yet, but it's like, how do you build out a plan for someone like Billie Eilish that has done everything and could pretty much do whatever she wants at this point? It's like she's already been in arenas, she's already has had massive creative shows, but that was definitely a challenge for us, trying to foresee and also be creative with something that is on Billy's level, but something new and interesting to the fans, and a reason for her to join us.
That's super cool. I wouldn't even think about what type of challenging kind of projects or capstones you guys have to have. Of course, with every internship, there's usually like that component of like a final presentation, but definitely for something that's so creative and adaptable that you guys do that can literally change from the day to day in the different types of market research that you guys have to conduct, especially with like the qualitativeness of it in terms of, oh yeah, well look about what they're saying on Twitter, or look at what they're saying about XYZ on this platform, or XYZ in terms of what their album sales look like, or all like taking all of that and understanding how to create a well-rounded pitch and argument on the agency perspective of why an artist should come here. And again, being able to show that projection of how we can serve you best, look at all of the different factors that an artist can serve, whether that's from the public perspective, looking at the business perspective, what can you do for us, and just even looking at that interim perspective of how we can help you, not just with the public, not just with the business part, but also how can we help you in terms of finding yourself, finding your rhythm as an artist, what we can do to make this a partnership. So I think that's really interesting, but also really cool. Props to CAA for being able to provide an experience to you guys that was serving as like a real world experience that you guys could relate to on a level, with also looking at an existing artist that has that big of a platform, and just being able to find creative ways to also incorporate what you're learning into something that you can take and speak to and get notes about and really perform better later on when you have another chance to do a performance or even do your own pitches someday with things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the company and the program was great. We did multiple challenges throughout the summer. I won't get too into that, but if there was anyone who's even remotely interested in entertainment at all, but especially live music, I would 100%, if you're a rising senior, to apply. It's a great opportunity.
It sounds like it from your perspective, and even in your whole process of getting your internship. Do you think there are some tips from how you went through the experience in recruitment that you could give to other people who you may encourage to apply?
Um, Well, this kind of stems, I think, for all of my internships. The first thing that I would say, well, first I'll make it short and sweet. Again, authenticity, being yourself. I show up as myself in all the interviews, and I think people want to work with personable people or people that they'd like. I know can definitely understand how the interview process might be daunting and oftentimes scary, especially for someone that's an introvert. But I think taking a step back and relaxing and realizing, like, they're human as well, kind of taking a bit of the edge off and just truly being yourself. I'd say that's what's gotten me most of my internships, and just being very out loud about the fact that I'm a fan. That's my passion. I'm very in tune to what the other fans are doing, and it excites me to create experiences for other fans like myself. I'd say that's definitely one. But two, something that's helped me throughout my career in general, and something I definitely wanted to say and speak about, is having a mentor. Live Nation has a segment of the company called Femme It Forward. They put on a lot of concerts in their own ways, but within that segment of the company, they have their own mentorship program called Next Gen Femme, and it pairs women, specifically women of color, with another female executive in the industry. And I got really, really lucky and blessed to get mine sophomore year. Not too sure why I was selected. Looking back, I'm like, what did I even talk about? Like, I knew nothing at the time. But my mentor is a beast. She's absolutely the best. She's based in DC. She works at the Live Nation in DC, which is really cool because we're both in live. So I have something to talk to her about, and she understands my world as well. And she's just absolutely the best. Although the technical part of the program has ended, we've maintained our relationship, and she's been a great help, especially coming from someone, and this is why I give that advice, someone in my shoes who doesn't have many people who are also in the industry. Like, my parents don't know what I'm talking about. My friends typically don't know what I'm talking about. It was different being in LA because people are very familiar with the industry, but like in DC, that's not necessarily as big of a thing. So being able to speak with her and pick her brain and learn from her experiences, but her also being able to guide me in the process, has definitely been a huge help. So I highly recommend the program.
Okay, I love the flex of the program, but also your mentor. Shout out to your mentor too. And just shout out to also them having a program where you are able to be mentored. So appreciate that, Live Nation, from the earlier career standpoint of just being able to provide that opportunity. But also, like you said, sometimes there are not a lot of people in your personal life that you can talk to about the things that you are pursuing, not because they're not interested or anything, but genuinely because there is just not the same relativity of what you want to do and what you're thinking about. And to have someone that's able to relate to you, but also be able to give you advice, is such a unique spot to be in. And it's always such a great advantage of having mentorship, no matter what career you're in. So I'm very grateful to hear that you are having that experience too. It always feels so wonderful hearing early career be so appreciative of having that experience of just being able to connect with other people and seeing that energy come off of this is what I've learned, and also seeming so grateful themselves of just having that opportunity.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, awesome. I want to thank you so much, Leslie, for all of your insight that you've given us into a relatively just not known about world. This is a very unknown piece of territory that a lot of people don't get into if you're not within that creative aspect, and giving us even more of a unique perspective and look into the world of live music, into the world of your internships, and most importantly, into the world of who you are and what you have going on for you next.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting that I was the first person in my industry to speak about this. So I hope if anyone was confused or trying to figure it out, they gained a little bit from my story.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Intentional Intern Podcast. We hope you're leaving with fresh insights and a boost of motivation to take on your career journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, and share it with your network. Connect with us on LinkedIn and Instagram and let us know your thoughts. Your feedback fuels our next great episode. Until next time, stay intentional, keep growing, and keep shining bright. See you in the next episode.